So, if you don't know who I am, my name's Ian. I'm 28 years old. I had a background in economic consultancy, and up until recently, I was a data analyst. And I came across Cold Approach about a year and a half ago. Like you, I was just scrolling through YouTube, and then the algorithm gods blessed me with a Cold Approach video. I watched somebody Cold Approach and I thought to myself, I can do this. And so I tried it out for myself after a lot of indecision and fear and uncertainty. But eventually I pulled the trigger. I went to London on September 14th, 2024. And I did my first ever daytime direct Cold Approach. For this video, I want to specifically talk about the reason why I started Cold Approach. Now, I, like many of you, I was on the dating apps for quite a long time. I just couldn't get any matches. Yeah, this was the time when I was watching lots of Red Pill content, and they were all talking about how to maximize dating profiles, and the whole idea of who was able to find success on these apps. It was this very macho, muscular, 6'3", money maxed guy, and if you were anything below that, then you wouldn't be successful. And I remember downloading dating apps, Hinge, Tinder, Bumble, literally all of them, signing up for them. I remember one time in particular, this might have been like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I was on Hinge and I was overthinking all of my prompts, right? Because you know how Hinge has all these prompts? I was taking so much time. It must have been 2 hours just trying to figure out the most witty way to respond to these prompts, so that whenever the girls would go on my profile, they'd be like, oh, he seems quite funny, or he seems quite interesting, or he seems quite smart. And I would spend so much time trying to conjure up the coolest, most wittiest prompt. And then I would, piss away that time, and then now have to pick photos. And I would go through my photo library and try to find the best photos, which one has the best lighting, which one has the best angle, where does my hair look good, where does my smile look nice. And I would just spend so much time trying to figure out, how to optimize my profile essentially to get matches. And then after all that time, I barely got anything. And this happened for months and months and months. Yeah. So before I got back on the dating apps, I took a break from dating. One, because I just knew that I wasn't going to get any play anyway, because I'd been on dating apps many years before this, but I never found any success. And the success I found was with girls who I just wasn't that attracted to, or they were a bit crazy. And it was very rare as well, right? I mean, you'd swipe thousands and thousands of times just to get one match every couple of months. I mean, the return on investment was terrible, but that's the only option I had, right? Sure, there were a couple of moments where I went to house parties and I managed to hook up with a girl at the party, but again, nothing special. And those were very lucky moments. And looking back, like a lot of those girls, maybe one or two of them, they're not the kind of girls that I would be proud of. No offense to them, but I wasn't that attracted to them. I was just desperate at the time. So back to the dating apps. So I remember I matched with this girl on Hinge. Luckily for me, the algorithm matched me with somebody who was attractive, and she was responsive, which is the main thing, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys who are on dating apps or who have been on dating apps, I'm sure you've been in that position where you match with somebody, but they never respond to your messages, right? So you send a message and it just goes out into the abyss and nobody fucking responds. I remember sending a message and she responded within maybe 20 minutes. And so I was like, okay, nice. I finally got a result, at least a start. I mean, I didn't know where I was going to go, but at least I got some response, right? So we get to talking. We talk for a couple of weeks. I give her my number. Then we start FaceTiming each other, and it was going well. It seemed like it was going well. And then as we're doing this, we're getting to know each other on text. And I remember if I go through my text messages, I would text her all the time, right? I would respond to her all the time. send these long, big paragraphs. I was really emotionally invested in this girl, more than I would have admitted at the time, because I was desperate. I was just happy to have an option. But bearing in mind, this girl, she was beautiful, by the way, beautiful Eastern European, Slovenian girl. And but she lived in the UK, studied in the UK. She was smart, she was going to university. And so we had a lot in common as well. She liked philosophy, I liked philosophy. You know, we liked to read as well. We both had similar upbringings. And so in my head, it felt like a great match. And maybe, I guess, to her, she probably felt the same at the time. But she lived all the way in Essex, which is almost 2.5 hours from where I live. So I was getting so little play that I had to extend my distance filter to like hundreds of miles in order to get more matches. So you could see how, you know, the extreme lengths I was going to find a match. And so the reason I mention this is because, of course, that made it quite difficult to set up a date because we live really far from each other. But eventually we settled on meeting halfway, and so we went on a hike. I won't talk about the details of the date, but I remember looking back now, knowing what I know, having been on so many dates through Cold Approach. The date wasn't that great. I was very nervous. I was very closed off. I didn't know what to say. I was overthinking. I barely even got close to her. You know, it kind of felt really platonic. I didn't even bother trying to hold her hand or getting close to her. You know, and it wasn't that great. It wasn't that intimate. It wasn't a terrible date. It wasn't a car crash date, but there just wasn't that romantic connection. We developed this seemingly vibrant connection on text and on FaceTime, but in person the vibe wasn't there, and that could have been because of nerves. But the point is, it wasn't there in person. She didn't feel it, and I didn't feel it either. But of course I still pursued her, and we kept on talking back and forth, but she was being a bit more flaky. And then I remember she changed her photos on her dating profile, which to me meant, okay, she's still looking for other options, which is fine. She's allowed to do that. But that definitely hurt me a bit. I was very needy at the time as well, because again, that was the only option I had. And so, we kept talking for a couple of weeks. I tried to set up a second date, to no success. And then eventually she texted me and said, look, I'm not ready to date, and I don't think this is going to work out, so you're better off just looking for somebody else. And that was heartbreaking. I mean, I remember getting that text message and just being in my bed thinking, what the hell, man? I thought this was going to work. I thought she liked me. I thought this would be the one. And it was so depressing, so depressing. Of course, my self-worth and self-confidence was being battered on the apps, because after that, I wasn't really getting any more action. So it was just a terrible time. And yeah, so I took that break. And then after, going on YouTube, consuming more Red Pill content, I eventually found Cold Approach. And that's when it changed. Because at this point, I was like, okay, so there's a way to go up to people naturally on the street, introduce myself, and get a date, set up a date. This actually works. And I don't have to look a certain way. I mean, that was huge. That was a big revelation. I thought, okay, this could actually work. And so that's one of the main reasons why I tried it, because it felt, at the time, it felt like the only option. And I felt like I was at rock bottom. I didn't feel comfortable trying to seduce girls in my social circle. I certainly didn't want to be approaching girls at work, trying to hit on girls at work. The dating apps didn't work for me. I just got burned by the love of my life. Woe is me. And so I was like, screw this. I mean, there's nothing else. What else do I do? Am I just going to sit in my bed and just continue watching porn and never find the girl that I want? Especially because everything else in my life felt like it was going in the right direction. I had a career, I had my own place, I had all this stuff. So, I was living alone. I'd done a bit of traveling. I was, by all accounts, I was a fairly normal guy living a normal life who should be seeing some success with women. Now, I'm not like a model, or I wasn't expecting to be this Casanova womanizer who just gets all these girls. But I just knew that something was up, and I knew that there had to be an alternative, a viable alternative that didn't include swiping. So that's why I tried Cold Approach, and Cold Approach has worked wonders for me. I've been on so many dates, I've had happy endings, I've been laid, and I've grown so much as a person as well. So all in all, it's been a great journey, and I'm so happy that I found the content and acted on it, even though I was like shit scared. The dating app experience with that girl from Essex was the turning point for me. But to be honest, this goes even way back, right? So I'd been in a relationship around COVID. So yeah, between 2019 and 2021. And it was a relationship where I liked the girl, but I wasn't that attracted to her. And I kind of felt pressured to get into a relationship from family and other friends who were getting into relationships. And she was one of the few girls who was actually interested in me at the time. So I just settled for her. Either way, I wasn't satisfied, and I ended up cheating on her because at the time I was immature and I couldn't control myself. And of course, I'd been living in so much romantic scarcity that whenever I got the opportunity to hook up with somebody else, I took it like that, right? And so that was a big mistake on my part, and I really regret that decision because, you know, I don't advocate cheating. I think transparency is always important, but at the time I was just desperate. Yeah. And at the time I deluded myself into thinking that I wanted a relationship, when in reality I took a relationship because that's all I could get. And there's nothing wrong with a relationship, right? I mean, eventually I want to be in a relationship with a person who I think is right for me, and somebody who, you know, like aligns with what I want in life. But at the time, if I'm being completely honest, the only reason, or the big reason I got into the relationship was because she was one of few people who would actually give me love and, you know, have sex with me and have this like romantic connection. Yeah, I regret it, but it's just a reflection of where I was at the time in terms of that desperation and neediness and lack of experience. And then before that, you know, I remember being in high school, I was friend zoned for like 2-3 years, and I never admitted it to myself or to my friends at the time, but it was obvious looking back that I was deep in the friend zone. And then I would try to hit on other girls, and they wouldn't really give me the time of day. And, you know, I was part of the cool friendship group. I used to play football, I used to dance, I used to play the drums in high school for a band. So I was in all these different social like cohorts, you could say, or groups. I had a bit of clout, let's say, not much. I was still a bit nerdy as well, and I was very skinny. That was something that I was very insecure about. I mean, I still am skinny. I mean, I'm not jacked in any way, sense or form. And so the guys, my friends who were in these groups, they were getting girls, like they were finding success, and they were finding success with the girls that I liked, but I just couldn't pull a muscle. I couldn't get any success. And so all my friends around me were getting play, but I wasn't getting anything. And that sucked. I would question myself all the time. I even remember going on a trip after year 11. So for the American guys watching, that's like the year before you go into your junior year of high school. So I was like 16. And so we just finished exams, and me and a couple of friends, so about 5 guys and like 6 girls, we all decided to go to Mombasa, which is like a coastal town in Kenya. And it's a place where people go out to party, have fun, drink a bit, even though we were underage, but we won't talk about that. And yeah, we had this trip planned out, and I remember a month leading up to the trip, me and the boys were like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna like hook up with this girl, like, you know, we were all like even like choosing the girls that we were gonna hit on, because it was an equal group, right? So we were all like, okay, I'm gonna go for that girl and you're gonna go for that girl. And we were all so excited. I was excited. And then the trip happened and I didn't get anything. So I was one of 2 guys out of, I think, 5 or 6 of us who didn't get anything, like anything. I was so dejected. And because, you know, this was, to me, this felt like the time when I could finally get some play. And I didn't get anything. And I felt like a loser. And I remember talking to my friend on the phone after the trip. He was asking me how it went. And I just remember just lying and being like, yeah, it was fine. Yeah, like I had a great time. And, I almost hooked up with this person, or I almost kissed this person or did this. I mean, I was 16, so it's all this like nonsense. But I just remember fabricating stuff. I didn't want to seem like a loser. I didn't want to feel like somebody who couldn't get like action. So that experience in Mombasa was a clear representation of my entire romantic life, from when I was 13 years old all the way up to 20. I mean, all the way up until really a year ago. So my romantic life from 13 to 27, that trip is a representation of my romantic scarcity throughout that entire period. And so there was rejection before that, and there was way more rejection after that. Rejection in high school or sixth form, rejection in university. I mean, I don't have time to talk about all those stories. Maybe I'll dive into a few of them here and there, but the point is, I just couldn't get what I wanted. I couldn't, attract the women I wanted to attract. And it was really hurting my self-confidence. And so, Code Approach I guess it was a way for me to fix that. Code Approach forced me to put myself out there again, face rejection, because I spent a lot of time running away from rejection because I'd experienced so much of it throughout high school. So you can understand. I mean, it's not easy. Like, so much of our self-worth comes from other people, what other people think of us. We feel they need to be validated, and when that doesn't happen, especially in a romantic context for a very long time, it can get to your head. Yeah, and so Code Approach, it was tough at first because I had to face those fears again. I had to face those insecurities again, and not just face them on a dating app or face them in a controlled environment like school, but I had to face it in public, like in broad daylight. That was scary. Having gone through that process for a year now, I'm so glad I did it, because, it really pushed me. It really pushed me to dig within and to figure out, okay, what am I not good at? Where can I improve in my conversation skills? Am I holding all this shame when it comes to women? Do I have all this guilt, sexual shame, lack of self-worth, neediness, trying to prove myself to these girls, and being agreeable, and, not being myself, not being authentic, trying to put on a facade, like all these issues that had developed over the years after constant rejection, they were all bubbling up in my approaches. And I didn't notice them at first. Thankfully, I got coaching, and that really blew the lid off on all the, let's say, issues that I'd been harboring in, which were probably preventing me from getting more success. But even before the coaching, I started to realize that, okay, I need to do this better or that better. And ultimately, I just need to get over this fear of judgment and being rejected, and just accept that rejection is a part of the process. So, once I'd understood that Code Approach was just more than getting laid or getting dates, and that it's this entire self-development process of really figuring out who you are and what you're capable of, and then it also helps shine a light on your past issues, which you can then resolve. I mean, I was sold. That's essentially what kept me going, right? Because I didn't get early success. It took me a while to get my first date. It took me 4 months to get my first date from Code Approach. So, I didn't find early success as one might expect. So, what kept me going was just that deeper layer of self-development. That's the reason I started Code Approach. I wanted to change who I was. I was frustrated. I felt like I'd hit rock bottom when it came to my dating life, and I didn't have any other options. Yeah, I mean, there were other options, but they didn't seem right to me. And I always felt like there was something more, something better to go for. And so I went for it, and I do not regret it at all. I have a big, cheeky, fat grin on my face because Code Approach daytime code approach, in the way that I learnt it, in the way that I do it, within the space that I'm a part of. To me, that is the best way to do it. It's the man's way to do it. And I really hope that you guys give it a try for yourselves. So yeah, peace out.